Welcome to Access Your Leadership, where we share inspiring career stories and talk about ways you can level up your own leadership potential. I'm your host and coach, Lakhdar, and today I'm here with Dr. Sidi M. Lakhdar. Dr. Lakhdar has spent 44 years of his career developing and designing programs, as well as teaching and training teachers of special education in multiple languages and multiple countries around the world. He's also a husband, a loving grandfather, and actually my amazing father. So, Papa, it's so great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
This is fun. I'm looking forward to this. And especially as I was saying to you, I haven't done an episode because I had taken a little bit of a break hiatus while traveling and doing some fun things with the family over the summer. It's amazing that now I'm getting back into publishing and producing these episodes, and you are my first for the fall. So,
well-deserved break.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thanks for being here. So, as I mentioned to you, one of the first questions I always love to ask any of my guests is actually, what's a leadership win that comes to mind that you're celebrating or that you feel particularly proud of?
I'm celebrating my retirement. Actually, I'm enjoying it very much after teaching and training teachers for 44 or 45 years, after a long career. In fact, I am still interested in working with teachers and working with the school districts and school systems. But I've slowed down a little bit because I want to enjoy my retirement and enjoy spending it with my grandchildren and my two great sons and their families.
Thank you. And of course, your lovely wife, my loving mother.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
Yeah, of course. Well, she's there all day, every day. So you get to be with her all the time.
After 49 years of marriage,
Well, that's what I was just going to say. 49 years of marriage, 44, 45 years of a career that I can say I was there to witness. You know, that expression, when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Right.
That was you. I mean, really, what you did in your career was a labor of love. And it was inspiring to see actually someone live and breathe that expression.
I had vacation every weekend when I used to go to Jamaica for the weekend to teach. I go Friday and come back Sunday.
Yeah, what an amazing experience.
Yeah, that was great. For 15 years, I did that.
Yeah, well, we'll get to some of that too, because I want to talk a little bit about, well, not a little bit, but I want to talk a lot about your really interesting, inspiring story. And I know that you've been writing a memoir, and I've heard these stories my whole life growing up, and they've inspired me, and they have motivated me to be the best version of myself that I can be as a son, as a brother, as a husband, as a father. So tell us, where are you from? Where did this story of Dr. Sidi M. Lakhdar start?
Well, I've always been interested in other countries and other places far away from Oujda, Morocco, where I come from, where I grew up. I was born and grew up. Oujda, for those who may want to know where it's situated, it's about 15 kilometers from the Algerian border. So we have a mixed culture of Algerian and Moroccan kind of traditions and training or beliefs. And I've always been interested in the United States to the point where I actually enrolled in the Peace Corps. I worked with the Peace Corps in the late 60s, training teachers who were assigned to Arabic and French-speaking countries. And so I've always been interested in other cultures and other countries. And after working with the Peace Corps, I got so involved and so interested in the American way of life and the way America is and the idea of an American dream that I wanted to try and see if I could ever reach that dream myself. So I spent the summer of 1968 in Morocco with students from various countries who were there to work on building a canteen in a poor neighborhood school. And I got interested in that. And I met an American woman at that time who said that if you ever come to America, we'll sponsor you. And so I said I needed to pass my baccalaureate first, which was 1970, 1969. And I promised her that if I took and passed my baccalaureate, that I would come to the United States. I didn't want to come without a degree. So I came to America in 1970 as a student and pursued my education and my training here.
And when you came here in 69 or 70, did you come with suitcases full of money? And
yeah, I had $4 in my pocket.
Yeah.
It was enough for me to buy a ticket from Icelandic Airlines. It was $169, I remember, from Iceland to New York. got to New York with $4 in my pocket, bought a cup of coffee, $1.50 and donuts. And then I had to get to Hyannis, where one of the American Peace Corps volunteers lived, and said that if you ever come to America, come and look me up. So I called him and said, I'm here, but I don't have any way to get in there.
Yeah, you were in New York at the time, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
approached a nice lady. I was in line to purchase ticket to Hyannis, Massachusetts. And I said, you probably don't believe this, but I don't have any money to buy a ticket to Hyannis. But if you lend me some money, you give me your address, I'll promise I'll send it to you. And she said, that's okay, that's all right. It was $27, I remember it was, from New York to Hyannis, Massachusetts. And so I got to Hyannis, and the nice lady gave me her address, and it was the first paycheck that I got. I sent her the money and thanked her for believing in me. And so I had 3 jobs that summer. I was a lifeguard, and I was a French teacher to a businessman, and worked in a restaurant, washing dishes to make enough money to be able to go to school.
And were you going to school at the time?
No, I was not. I came to Hyannis. From Morocco, I applied to various colleges and universities, and everybody says, you need money, you need to pay tuition, and how much it was. I couldn't get a scholarship. And so the only university or college that answered was Hyannis Community College. They said, if you ever come here, we'll accept you. We can't accept you just from far. So I showed up at the college next day, and I said, I'm here. I said, who are you? I said, I have a letter from you saying that you will admit me if I came in person. And I said, well, that's a form that we send to everybody.
Oh, jeez.
So you have to apply, and you have to pass a test, and you have to have all kinds of things. So the girl that I knew in Morocco, that was visiting Morocco, the American girl who lived in Ipswich, Massachusetts, and her aunt knew somebody at Beverly Community College. And through that connection, I was able to get admitted, not knowing much English, not having any money. That's how it started. Tuition was $100 a semester at that time.
Wow. Well,
It was
that's
a big
changed. Yeah,
deal.
that's changed a bit. Yeah. So you're now no longer living in Hyannis or in Hyannis. You're living in Ipswich.
No, that was the summer I was in Ipswich because the college was in Beverly, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And so I had to live in Beverly. So I found a family that needed somebody to take care of their kids and do the cooking and do the dirty work. And so I lived with them and took care of their children. They were working, both of them were working. So I would wake the children up and get them ready to go to school and take them to school. They were young kids. They were like 6 and 8.
Wow.
And then I go to the college, take courses, come back in the afternoon to make dinner for everybody. That's how I lived for 4 years.
And that's where you got your undergraduate degree was from.
Yeah, when I got my associate degree from Beverly Community College, I applied to Salem State College, which is now Salem University,
Yeah.
which is next door to Beverly. And that's where I got my bachelor's. And that's where I met my wife, your mother.
Yeah.
He was going to the same school.
Yeah. So you got your undergrad from Salem State and then
Master's in teaching.
also from Salem State.
Yeah, I took those courses at night while working during the day. And then I got my doctorate from Boston University.
And did you work at Boston University or did you just study
No,
there?
I worked at Landmark School, which is a school for students with learning disabilities.
Yeah. And then after your doctorate, what did you do from there?
I taught at Boston University for a while until people from Saudi Arabia came to knock on my door and said, we need you to come to Saudi Arabia to train our teachers, since you are the only Arabic speaking person we know who is trained in special education. Most of the international students, they go for computers and sciences and all of that. And so they said, well, I'm here teaching here at Boston University. They said, we'll make you an offer you can't refuse.
Well, you were making good money at Boston University though, right?
Well, not really. As an assistant professor, I was making $18,000 a year.
Yeah. So Ramco offered you a little bit better
Oh yeah,
salary.
they offered me all kinds of incentives and all kinds of temptations and all kinds of advantages. And so I discussed it with your mother, and then I said,
You had a son at this point too, right?
yeah.
So I had entered the picture.
His name was Hakim.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious though, let's go back to the comment that you made about, which I think is really interesting. When international students come over, they tend to sort of identify areas that they can work in that will make this life change and big move worth it. You know, engineering or medical or law. What made you decide you wanted to pursue special education?
I grew up with people with disabilities, and I saw them in school, made fun of and ridiculed and taken advantage of. And I always felt more sympathetic and more aware of their needs. And so I gradually drifted toward that field where I wanted to help some of these who were good friends of mine who were in school but not doing very well and not labeled in anything but stupid when they only had learning disability
Mm.
or needed some sort of modification or special program where they could succeeded and could have done better. And so I remember my good friends that I was friends with. They were good outside school, but in the school they were not
They struggled.
feeling good about themselves and
Yeah.
feeling good about their accomplishments.
And this is early 80s when you're going into this field.
Oh,
The
it's 70s, 70s.
Well, 70s, sure, yeah, but also when now you've finished your degrees, you're out now
Yeah,
working in this field. That's early 80s where labels and stigmas were sort of commonplace, and there still wasn't yet a lot of deep understanding around learning disabilities or disabilities in general.
right, right.
So then how long were you in the Middle East for?
Well, we were there for 5 years. We went to Saudi Arabia for 3 years, and then 2 years that we went to Kuwait. And then after I started to develop a program, training program, and trained Saudi teachers in the first female school and then male school, as you know, the sexes are separated in this classroom in Saudi Arabia. There is a girls' school and a boys' school. And so after I spent 3 years in Saudi Arabia, they heard about me from Kuwait. And they came knocking on the door again and said, "We'll make you an offer. You can't refuse if you if you come to Kuwait."
Wow.
So I quoted my salary, and they were very gracious and very appreciative of my ending my contract in Saudi Arabia. And I was not working for the Ministry of Education, actually. I was working for Aramco, the Arabic American oil company that had a school system in Saudi Arabia for the expatriates, for the workers who were living in this compound of 20,000 foreign and American and foreign workers who were
Wow.
there living for years and sending their kids to school, just like any other school system.
Wow.
And they had a
Well,
special education program there too, as well.
yeah. I mean, that says something about them as an organization to be at that time somewhat progressive, right?
Yeah.
To acknowledge the need for that and to bring a specialist in.
Well, they believe that if you are happy, you can only be happy if your family is happy and comfortable. They made it very comfortable for us. They made it very convenient. And as I said, the money was no object at that time.
Yeah.
And so they believe that they need to make you happy and make you content so that you can do a good job.
Yeah.
And once you're comfortable knowing that your family is in good hands, whether it's in the medical field or in education or any other, they provided everything. They provided everything.
Yeah.
They provided me a car. All I had to do is drive to a gas station, say, fill it up, and drive away.
I mean, even that, Papa, I think is a leadership lesson in itself, seeing how important it is to support the well-being of your employees. And it can be, like you said, medical, educational, financial, developmental. I mean, employees, and God, I mean, I can only imagine how it's evolved since back then to where it is today. But employees have a lot of needs. And I don't mean needy as in spoiled or entitled, even, but they have a lot of needs
And
in terms.
they're doing what they do for their family.
Right,
Most of
right,
us worked long hours when we were younger. We worked long hours, not that we wanted to work. Sometimes we had to,
right,
so that our family can be comfortable.
right. And I like the fact that the acknowledgement and the compensation matched your level of commitment, because I think when there's a discrepancy between that, when employees feel like I'm giving more than I'm getting, that's when sort of the resentment breeds, that's when the discontent emerges, and then the relationship between employee and employer breaks down. But I think that if an employer is really attuned to what their employees need and they're doing all that they can, doesn't mean they have to throw millions and billions of dollars like oil money at employees, but even a small business, a small organization, in whatever capacity they have to care for their people and to support them and provide them with resources, to be able to do that goes a really long way in terms of keeping people around and keeping people happy and working hard.
An example of this is that even in addition to your salary and all the other incentives and all of the other perks, they give you a stipend every month for food.
Yeah. And wasn't there one for
Stipend.
vacation or something?
Yeah,
Like
vacation, you go first class in their
yeah, true.
cargo plane.
Yeah.
And as you know, your brother was born there.
Yeah.
They took good care of him and your mother when they were in the hospital. And so
I have very fond memories of our time in the Middle East. And it's amazing to think, again, this is your story, not Mama's story, but to think you married this girl from New Bedford, Massachusetts. You've met her in Salem in college. She was quite adventurous to link up with this guy from Morocco who was working in the language lab, and you end up falling in love and getting married and having a child, and then finishing your PhD, and soon after relocating to the Middle East in the early
and I
80s.
give her credit for joining me and not arguing with me about going to Middle East when she was ready to share you with your grandparents and share you with your family. I said, let's go.
Yeah.
But I was not doing it for me. I was doing
Yeah.
it for you and for your mother and for the future of our family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she was very brave in believing in me enough to say, all right, I guess this will be a journey that we have to take together. And I hope it's for the best. And it has been for the best.
Yeah. Well, I can say, not that this podcast or conversations about relationships, but there's a lot of leadership that comes up in relationship, and the way that you communicated, the way that you were disciplined and committed to the things that you wanted to do in this life, both for your career, but most of all for your family, I think helped to create that level of trust and faith and belief in you, to where, while not an easy decision, it was much easier than it would have otherwise been, because she felt like this was a good move for all of us. And I think it's great to acknowledge her for having done that, because that was, again, early 80s. This was before email and FaceTime and all the things that make communicating so much easier these days. Back then, it was handwritten letters from the Middle East back to Massachusetts when she wanted to communicate, or incredibly expensive long distance phone calls.
Right.
So I think that's a really special thing. And I will say that in the 49 years of your marriage, the years that I've been around and I can remember, it's always been the utmost trust and love and respect that I've seen her share for you, because of you being consistently who you are. So you're in the Middle East. You spent how many years there? 5 years?
5 years.
And then what compelled you, or compelled us, I should say, to
You.
Yeah, my fault.
You, because you were ready to go to school.
Yeah.
And I was ready to stay there forever if I wanted to. I mean, I had the job that I could have kept and become very, very, very rich.
Yeah.
But wealth didn't mean much to me. If my son was growing up in a country that is not mine and that is not his mother's, and you were ready to go to school. And I said, that's it. School is going to start in America, and he's going to be grown up as an American instead of being divided between these three countries. And so I decided that 1987 was my last contract in Kuwait, that we came back here for you to go to school and to start your education and your upbringing in America.
Why Florida and not Massachusetts?
Well, her parents, your grandparents moved to Florida at that time. So we wanted to be closer to them. It was either Florida or California. Your mother is terrified of earthquakes. So I said, let's take the hurricanes.
Yeah, right. At least you can plan for those a little bit.
At least you have a 2 or 3 day warning.
Yeah. Yeah, true. So when you came back here, did you have a job waiting for you?
I did not. I did not have anything.
So you left this lucrative dream scenario, dream job opportunity in the Middle East to come back here so I could start school in America and had no job waiting for you?
Well, I had the money at that time, so I was not pressed to get anything at that time. I wanted to get something in my field, and so I applied to several universities in the area, and I was asked to come for an interview at St. Thomas University in Miami.
And we were living in West Palm Beach at the time.
What? Yeah, I was driving from Palm
Yeah.
Beach.
So if anybody's driven around South Florida, any of you listeners from South Florida or have been in South Florida and can think of what it means to commute from West Palm Beach to Miami and back,
Right.
you know the level of commitment there.
So
So
I taught at St. Thomas University for 4 years, and then in 1991 joined Nova Southeastern University until I retired.
and by that point we had moved out of West Palm Beach and into the Fort Lauderdale area. What was it? Unincorporated Fort Lauderdale when we first moved, right?
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
was the best decision I think that we made. Not get sucked into making money and thinking only financial stability. I wanted you to have stability in your upbringing and in your environment, and growing up around your cousins and around your grandparents and in the American system of education, and be as American as you can be.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, you've heard me say this before, but thank you because I had a wonderful childhood. Truly, I think back on all of it so fondly. I loved where I grew up. I loved the family that we were, sort of nuclear family that we were, but also the extended family, cousins who were like sisters to me, an aunt who's like a second mother, grandparents I got to spend so much quality time with, and even one grandparent who's still around at 93 years old this year. Such an interesting choice for you to make, having all of that opportunity available to you in the Middle East. And I mean, it reminds me, and not in an apples to apples comparison, but it reminds me even of my decision to leave Harvard.
Yeah, when you
Because
know it's the right thing to do, you just do it.
when everyone found out that I was leaving Harvard, because they had seen me sort of steadily rising through the ranks. I had completed my MBA not that long before we made a decision that we were going to relocate. And everyone thought, what are you, crazy? You got into Harvard, you're here, you've made it through the gates.
Yeah,
Why would you leave? Most people who get that opportunity stay there for as long as they possibly
yeah,
can. And you've heard the expression before, we all know it, this sort of golden handcuffs. And I don't like to be handcuffed by anything. And the reality is, while it was a great opportunity, I loved my time at Harvard Law School. I had a vision for what my family life and our future was going to look like. And it wasn't being on wait lists for preschool and kindergarten or battling traffic or keeping up with the Joneses. It was building a life and a future that my boys could really grow into, and where they'd have a relationship with you and mama and their uncles and their aunts and cousins, and where they'd be part of a community. And that was not an easy decision to make. Caitlin was doing very well. I was doing very well. We could have very easily stayed there. And to relocate again, I also relocated with no firm job offer waiting for me. We lived with you guys for 13 months while we
yeah.
figured out where we were going to live next.
And I think
But
one of the best decisions also that I made in regards to my two sons is living in a community, living in a development where there were kids of their age running around and where they could share their time with and learn from each other. So, we had the chance of buying a bigger house and a bigger lot in some faraway places. But I decided that it's best to live in a development where there are young kids that children can play with and can associate with.
yeah, the playborhood, as they call it.
Yeah,
It was an amazing neighborhood. And I'm still friends with all those guys
yeah,
that I was friends with when I was 7 years old, the boys' age.
that's the idea.
Yep. They're all groomsmen at my wedding. I was just online with them yesterday making fantasy football picks for this upcoming football season. I've known all these guys since I was in elementary school, and they're all still, close friends, if not brothers to me. And that has a lot to do with you choosing to raise us in a neighborhood like that. I think it was so fortunate that it worked out the way it
The
did.
neighborhood school was also a very positive.
Yeah.
It was a brand new school and a brand new principal, and your mother got involved with the PTA and all of that, which was great, I think, for all of you.
Yeah. Such an amazing story, Papa, and thank you for sharing all that because I know and love the story, obviously, because ever since I was a little boy saying, Papa, can you tell me a story when you're a little boy? I've heard them from when you were a little guy balling up all of your friends' socks into one big ball so you could play soccer because that was the only soccer ball you had, to
Right.
swords out in the alleyways with sticks, and the one toy tank that you had that was the only toy you had, and every time it broke, you had to fix it so that you could continue playing with your one toy.
I had a happy childhood.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't know we didn't have much. We came from middle class family. We never were short of money or short of food or struggling to make a living. My father was director of electrical company, and we had enough to be happy, and we had good upbringing, a good childhood.
yeah. Well, and it sounds like a lot of what you experience in terms of the essentials, the foundation for a good, happy childhood, a good, happy life was based on, the finances enough to be adequate so that you could eat and live. But really, at its core, it was about family. It was about
Right.
being in a situation that allowed you all to thrive, but, thrive together.
And there were 12 of us in the house.
Yeah.
8 children, father and mother, and usually there is an aunt or grandmother living with us also.
Yeah, it's
So you
amazing.
can imagine the responsibility that my father had in taking care of 11 or 12 people.
Absolutely. So now, fast forward all these many years later, what year did you retire in?
2019.
So 2019, we had your big retirement party, celebrated your many years of truly, truly heartfelt service in a career that you clearly loved. What's it been like since retiring?
It's great. I feel that I have done my job, that it's for the new generation to take up the torch and continue with it. I've trained enough teachers that every time I go to a school, I see one of my teachers and one of my students' teachers who are teachers now. And that's gratifying to know that I have trained teachers in Morocco, teachers in Jamaica, in the Bahamas, and I have maybe improved the life of children with disabilities.
Yeah. You mentioned Jamaica earlier and then just now the Bahamas. Can you talk a little bit about how did that come about? What were you doing there? Was this just party time? You were going and spending the weekend away from your family while we were all wondering where you were, or
But they reminded me of Morocco and
mm,
the fate of the children with disabilities in Morocco, where they were neglected, unappreciated, and even discriminated against. So one teacher came to join one of my classes. She was a big shot in Jamaica, and she said, "We need this program in Jamaica as well. We need to train teachers to work with children with disabilities." So I went and did a survey and found that indeed, out of any classroom, there are 5 or 6 kids who are just neglected or put aside and not bothered with or teased or humiliated. And so she said, "Can you develop a program for us to train teachers to work with these children?" They were children with learning disabilities, with autism, with emotional disturbance, with ADD, ADHD, a variety of kids.
so
And
she was a student of yours?
yeah, she was a student of mine. She's going for her master's and wanting to go back to Jamaica and do it herself. But there were no teachers in special education in Jamaica at that time, in Bahamas. And so she inquired about it and went to the Ministry of Education in Jamaica and asked them if they could support such a program. And they did. And I used to go teach over the weekends, leave Friday morning, teach Friday all night, and then Saturday all day and come back Sunday.
Yeah, with a bag full of fresh
Montego,
Jamaican beef
Montego,
patty.
Montego Bay, Mandeville, Kingston.
Was this through Nova Southeastern or was this on your
No,
own?
yeah,
Yeah.
no. But the student, she was in my program at St. Thomas.
Oh, interesting.
And from there, she followed me to Nova Southeastern, where she got her doctorate. And she was instrumental in starting this program
Wow.
with me.
Wow. How many years did you do that?
I did that for almost 20 years.
Wow.
Every other weekend, I'll go to Jamaica and the Bahamas.
Yeah. Not a bad gig.
No, it was nice after I finished teaching Saturday, which I used to teach all day. Then I relax after 5 o'clock, go to the beach or go to the pool or go and visit Bob Marley's museum
Yeah.
or go to a Bob Marley type of reggae kind of festival around the corner from my hotel.
Yeah. Pretty great.
And of course, hooked on jerk chicken.
Yeah. Right. Jerk chicken and beef patties.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are pretty great. I remember that a lot as a kid growing up. So before we get into a little bit more about how things have been post-retirement, can you think back to a time, whether it was when you were first just getting to the United States and thinking about your education, or after you got your PhD and were thinking about career moves, where you felt frozen by some dilemma or some decision or some challenge? And what was that? And what was your process to resolve that?
Well, I think health is very important, and there are some scary health warnings that made me think to slow down a little bit. And so that's the only thing that I can think of that would have prevented me and still prevents me at this time to continue in my pursuit of training teachers and working with children.
Well, what about earlier, Papa? Like, what about earlier in your career? Like when you were a young father, you were a young husband, you were a young PhD grad. Like, was there anything that came up that just sort of threw you for a loop? Were there any challenges that you recall?
I can't think of anything at this time.
Okay. Was there anybody that you found particularly difficult that you had to navigate that relationship with or that dynamic with?
No, really, I'm a very cautious person, as you know, and I'm very organized and very meticulous about things. And I don't let things get to the point where they become a problem for me. I try to resolve them before they do.
Hmm.
Of course, money was the issue before we went to Saudi Arabia. And I was wondering how I could raise a son or even two sons with $18,000 salary
Hmm.
from teaching at Boston University. But I think once I got a job with Aramco and I went to the Middle East, that problem was never an issue with me.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you, just your response made me think of this. Going back to when you had to ask that woman to buy your flight for you to go to Hyannis, what made you approach somebody, period? But what made you approach her? I mean, how did you feel comfortable enough to ask somebody that?
Well, she was a pretty girl. I was attracted to her physique in a sense. And I was not bad looking myself at that age. So I thought we would hit it off. And we did. We sat down afterwards and talked. And she said, come and visit me in Hyannis. But I had enough confidence in myself that I had the courage to approach her. And the provision that this is put on, this is not gimmick, this is real.
Yeah.
And that I needed $27 to buy a ticket to Hyannis. And so she thought that I had an honest face too.
I think anybody who's known you throughout your life, certainly I know this, Samir knows this, all my friends who have experienced you, Caitlin, anybody would agree you are a very authentic person, that you are very real, you are very honest, you have an incredibly high level of integrity. Your trustworthiness is unmatched. I know Mama would attest to that. And I think that that's such an important thing for people to hear and to understand, that the intentions behind that question of, hey, would you mind? And again, I like the fact that you even admitted she was a pretty girl. I was attracted to her and I was a young guy. And I thought, okay, well, how can I leverage this to approach her? But once approaching her, it wasn't a pickup line, it wasn't a come on, it was an honest question of, hey, I have to ask somebody, and you were the person that I identified to ask. Here's my situation.
As my father would say, the worst they could say is no.
Yeah,
If you don't ask a question, you never get an answer.
yeah,
If you answer it by yourself or for yourself, you're not getting the right information.
that's right.
Worst that they could say is no.
Yeah,
And I approach that throughout my life, whether it's going to a store and find something that I need, but it had a chip on it or had a scratch on it. And I usually approach the manager and say, could you take less for this product? And usually they do,
yeah,
but you would never know if you don't ask. And the
yeah.
worst they could say is no.
Right. I think that's such a powerful lesson. That's certainly one that I got from you, and I really appreciate being able to reflect on. And I mean, even in my time at Harvard, I doubled my salary in 5 years during my time there. None of that would have been possible had I been afraid to ask. And a lot of the reason why, and you sort of alluded to it, a lot of the reason why we are afraid to ask oftentimes is because we create our own story and our own answer of how this is going to play out. But the reality is, we can't be for sure that that's true.
Yeah.
We can't say that for a fact. And it reminds me of even like certain, 100%, no doubt about
Yeah.
it. Like when you used to ask me. And I've been reflecting on that when you used to sort of tease me with that when I was younger, because how often do we do that for ourselves? Do we actually playfully ask ourselves, do you actually, is that for sure? Is it definite? 100%? No doubt about it? For certain? I mean, if you don't know that this is an actual fact, is it true? What's the evidence? Do you know that for a fact? Then there's still something more to uncover there. And oftentimes you can uncover it by just simply asking. I think that's such a amazing lesson and takeaway. So now thinking about post-retirement, you mentioned that some health issues have caused you to reflect and to slow down a little bit. I asked before this call if you wouldn't mind me sharing that you're in the early stages of Parkinson's diagnosis and that has slowed you down considerably. How are you processing that? What?
I'm not letting it get me down. I go to the gym every day. I keep up. Actually, Parkinson, if you counteract it with exercise and a good workout routine, it slows down a little bit in its progression.
Yeah,
So that's my main concern now, and my main job is to address these early signs of Parkinson, so that they don't become a hindrance and they don't stop me from enjoying my family, enjoying myself.
yeah,
So I go to the gym every day for 2.5 hours, sometimes 3 hours. That's my job now.
yeah. Well, and you've always been the picture of health, taking good care of your donkey, as you used to say, make sure
Yeah,
that your donkey can get you up the hill.
right.
And that is your body. And I think a lot of us, myself included, and you and I have had conversations about this, um, we tend to put some things or some people or some goal on the back burner because we see it as secondary, but actually our health, both physical and mental, is primary. It's everything. And I think that if you hadn't put in the effort and been as disciplined as you were for so many years of your life, you might be having a completely different experience with this Parkinson's than you are. And I think it's allowing you to navigate it a lot easier than maybe it would have otherwise been.
Right.
What do you tell yourself in the moments where you're feeling, a little naturally, of course, down about the situation, or you're reflecting on, I know you were an approved Fulbright scholar with the State Department
Yeah.
and you had some opportunities to travel. You and I have talked about that. And I don't mean to pick at it, but I know that people who are listening, they're thinking, wait, so how does this guy just like never feel the lows of not being able to do what he wants to do or plan to do because of this? But that's actually not true. You have your moments where you're feeling a bit low or you're feeling a bit down naturally. How do you handle that?
I believe that things will be better next day, that things will always be better. That there are two sides to the story, two sides to whatever event there is, always a better outcome that will come later on as a result of that difficult time.
Have you found that to be the case throughout your life, and where there were difficult moments, and then through
Yeah,
that struggle came?
right, right. I mean, coming to America with $4 in my pocket was not easy. To know that you are landing in a country where only $4 in your pocket. What are you going to do? You have to be creative and innovative and willing to struggle. And I did struggle first years. I never had a scholarship. I've always paid for my own education, even going to Boston University. I used to work at the Landmark School all day and then drive to Boston to take courses at Boston University, where I paid thousands and thousands of dollars for my doctorate. So I've
Yeah.
never relied on anybody to carry me through. I always depended on myself, and I had enough confidence in myself to know what the next step is and go toward that goal.
Yeah. I mean, confidence, discipline, commitment, belief, all of that. And I think that there's even a little plug in here for a probably somewhat undervalued attribute, which is optimism. People downplay positivity and optimism as something like Pollyannish or maybe like a little just a nice to have or an afterthought. But I actually think that when we see the expression or the meme or the quotes online around leadership, that positivity during difficult times isn't naive. It's actually leadership.
Right,
And it's this thought of positivity is an essential part of making sure that you and those around you feel like even in these more challenging moments, whatever they might be, tragic or just, generally low, it's going to be better. On the other side of this is something better. I think that's a nice takeaway. And I don't think it's not just a nice thing. I think it's really important for people to adopt that mindset so that it doesn't feel like they're always climbing out of this hole. Maybe this hole is going to redirect you to something much more exciting. It doesn't always have to be a struggle for struggle's sake. And I have the book right here next to me, Papa, and you've heard me talk about it before, and I give it to my clients. The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. It's this idea of, things happen for a reason, but it's more than that. It's the obstacle is in your way because it needs to be. This is a challenging time because it's going to show you something about yourself. It's going to show you something about what you value in life. It's going to teach you a lesson that's going to make what's on the other side of that obstacle so much more valuable because now you understand it. It's sort of, you can't enjoy the sweet without the sour. They both exist. It's this both and philosophy.
That's what makes us stronger too.
I agree. I agree. The metaphors are unlimited, but I think about the one that people always describe around the butterfly. As the caterpillar is emerging from the cocoon as a butterfly, if you peel back the chrysalis and try to help it get out easier instead of letting it do it on its own, its wings actually won't be strong enough to fly. That whole struggling through the chrysalis to get out and move in ways, that look like it's a struggle or it's painful or it's impossible, that's actually strengthening the wings. So when it is time to emerge, you've developed the strength to now actually get off the ground and fly. I think the same is true about life. There are those moments where you think to yourself, God, why is this so hard? And then the answer sort of reveals itself later on. You're like, now I get it. So as you think about leaders, Papa, and we'll wrap up with this, what's a skill or an attribute that you think people who are listening, if they want to be better leaders, that they should focus on?
Trust. See, the good leader is somebody who chooses the right person, people for his company, and who gives them the freedom to be creative and to be innovative and not scrutinize everything they do and trust them that they will do the right thing. But the first thing would be to hire the right people and give them the freedom to be instead of having to manage them or micromanage them and observe every move they make.
Yeah.
First, you have to, as a leader, you have to make the right decision. Once you make that decision that this is the person that I'm going to hire and this is the best person, then give that person a chance to show you what he can do. Now, later on, you may decide that this person is not doing his job or her job correctly, but don't micromanage them. Don't tell them what to do since you already selected them.
Yeah.
Onus is on you because if they turn out to be terrible, is that you were not good in making the right decision.
And it's difficult to know if they're a good fit or not a good fit if you don't give them the space to be themselves and to perform at their best. And maybe ultimately you realize that their best isn't what you're looking for, and that's okay. That's a conversation that can be had. But if you're micromanaging them and they feel confined and sort of walled in their role, then you're not actually getting a fair assessment of their performance. Yeah, I think trust is a great one. I love that answer because trust is important in romantic relationships and family relationships. It's important in the way that we're out there on the road driving. Trust shows up in everything, but I definitely agree that in this context, as you're describing it, trust of a leader in their people is so important because then why did you hire them if you don't trust them enough to do the job that they're here to do?
In my capacity as a director of the special education program, I had the chance to hire several professors to teach in my program. First, I learned everything about them and I hired them. They're teaching miles and miles away from me. They're supposed to use my curriculum, my syllabus, and I trust that they do. But before I select them, I learn enough about them to know that these are the people that I can trust for them to be teaching my courses in Paris or in Greece or in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get feedback from students that this professor is not doing his or her job. Then, as you said, that's another story. That's another issue.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's a nice subtle reminder, maybe not so subtle, but it's a nice reminder of how important hiring is too. Really thoughtful, intentional hiring, because I think a lot of people, and I mean, this could be its own podcast, but when it comes to hiring, I think a lot of people, they put together a job description, and nowadays you can go on ChatGPT and plug in what you want for a job description, and it'll give you a fully robust, comprehensive job description, and you may not even review it. You just copy it and paste it and start hiring for a position. And now people, they don't have to send paper resumes and cover letters. They just upload and submit, upload and submit, upload and submit. So then when you finally do decide to pick an employee, a lot of times it's sort of a crapshoot. You're thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to take my chance on this person instead of investing a little bit more time on the front end to make sure that you're actually hiring the right person for the role. It then allows you much sooner to trust that person because you vetted them appropriately versus just putting a warm body in a seat and then micromanaging them. And they say, why are you micromanaging me? Well, I'm micromanaging you because I don't really know you that well, and I'm not sure if you can do the job. Well, why did you hire me then? And you can avoid all that by being much more thoughtful, strategic, and intentional about hiring.
Once you make your decision about a person, give that person a chance to show you what he or she can do.
Yeah.
It may surprise you, may disappoint you.
Yeah.
But at least give them a chance.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway. Thank you. Well, Papa, I've really enjoyed getting to have you on my podcast as a guest. Thank you for taking the time and spending your afternoon with me.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and I love you very much, and
I love you too.
Know that you're doing a good job. One thing that I want to end with is a wise man said, a wealthy person is one whose kids want to hang around with, and you and your brother want to hang out with me. So I'm the wealthiest guy on earth.
Thank you, Papa. I feel very lucky to have a father like you and to be able to tell your story, even just a short version of it, because I know there's so much more involved in it than what we got into today. But at least this captures a little bit of who I know you to be and who I've been so lucky to have as a father. So thank you for the time.
Thank you for being a good son.
You're welcome. Thanks for raising me.
I'm wealthy in your company and your love.
Thanks, Papa. I appreciate that. As always, I'd love to hear from you about the episode. What came up for you as you think about leveling up your own leadership game? And please, if you enjoy this episode, I encourage you to like and subscribe. And if you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn at Akeem A. Lakhdar or at lakhdarcoaching.com. Thanks for tuning in. Keep being great, and we'll see you next time.